The next big policy event that's coming up is Budget 2023. Now, industries presented its recommendations, a usual list of recommendations that go in year after year. But if we were to talk about the budget in the context of what's happening in the world, whether it's China +1, it's re-globalization, it's supply chain resilience, what do you believe thematically the priority areas should be for Budget 2023? What should the theme be for Budget 2023?
You know, Shireen, I just want to step back and actually bring some reality.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of good news. There's a lot of opportunity as has been rightly highlighted. But I just believe that we need to set our goals and then execute to the goals. Therefore, as Janmay mentioned, we are now the 5th largest economy, around the size of UK, on many days bigger than UK. On some days around that. So that's a great achievement. The first goal we must set for ourselves is, what does it take for us to become the top 3? So that is, and how do we get there? And in that context, obviously absolute GDP does matter. And for us to be in the top 3, we will have to, from a 3 trillion, think about a number which is double-digit at least.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can figure out the time frame within which we need to do. So we are a long way from top 3, but a lot of work to be done with focus. The second important point is we have to keep the reality check that we have a denominator challenge, which is 1.4 billion people. A UK has 68 million people for a 3 trillion economy. For a UK per capita is $47,000, India is 2.5. And I think if we want to become world class, we should get out of this mindset of PPP and other things. Let's now compare ourselves with the best in class, dollar to dollar. And what does it take for us in the next, say, 10 years to think about a per capita GDP which is as close as possible to $10,000. At $2,500, even if we double it at 7%, it gets to 5 in 10 years. We need to grow faster in dollar terms. So let us work towards absolute top 3 and per capita to move to a serious middle income country with a 10,000 per capita. And I think Baba and Sanjeev, both the Sanjeevs and all of us, we have optimism for India's future. But if we want to be truly Atmanirbhar, we're going to ask ourselves, how do we get better on 2 profit and loss accounts of India? One is current account. Yes, a growing economy needs to have a current account deficit, and we keep on having a current account deficit for a long period of time. But at some point of time, we must be Atmanirbhar. Even this year, we will be $120 billion negative current account deficit. Means our profit and loss account in foreign exchange is we are earning less than what we are spending. Therefore, we need to get Atmanirbhar on our current account. And second, I understand fiscal deficit consolidated has gone up worldwide thanks to COVID. And India is at consolidated, give or take, around 10% of GDP. We need to have a credible, consistent, resilient plan that we will get better on P&L account, even on fiscal deficit. Therefore, total GDP, per capita GDP, and getting our 2 profit and loss accounts right, and whatever it takes for us as business and policy working together for that clear objective set in front of us.
No, but that's what I want you to focus on now. Whatever it takes. So what is it going to take? Let's talk about that, Mr. Kotak. Ambitious goals, audacious goals that you've set out for us in terms of being able to get to $10,000 in terms of the aspiration. But what is it that you believe will take us there? And, what should the priorities be?
I share with the finance minister. People in this room and on this dais need to get our animal spirits up a lot more. And it really is it. Investment.
So what is holding the animal spirits back? If you're optimism, you're confident about the growth of the India story in the near term as well as the long term, then what is holding animal spirits back? Liquidity is clearly not a concern.
I think there are a number of factors. First, the global situation thanks to COVID and Ukraine has made a lot of people in India circumspect. In a 24/7 news, if you keep on getting barrage of bad news from around the world, it's got to affect your psychology and your mind. And we are not immune to this. I remember in 2008-9, I took a call don't read the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal. It makes you very negative about the world and you start taking negative.
Only watch CNBC-TV18.
Not CNBC or CNBC.
CNBC-TV18.
Okay. So I think the fact of the matter is 24/7 digital world, what happens around the world affects us.
Speaking about moving forward, and you said at the end of the day, people will have to look at metrics, people will have to look at return on investments, and perhaps which is why at this point in time, there is some trepidation, there is some nervousness, there is hesitation. But what will it take? Let's forget about the next 6 months as the geopolitics sort of plays itself out. What will it take to revive the animal spirits, which, I've been hearing about this unleashing of animal spirits for the last several years now. It doesn't seem to have happened, or it doesn't seem to be happening. What will it take to get that going? I mean, even the government is frustrated, saying, look, we've done whatever we could as far as corporate taxes are concerned. What more can we do? What will it take?
The government has, I must say, been exceedingly not only responsive but proactive. But let's also keep in mind, when you look at the last 3 or 4 years, we've gone through a period of time that none of us in our living memories can recall. Broadly, there are a few large areas that one needs to focus on, because we are talking of this highway, as people have said, for the next 10 years of the kind of growth that's possible. One is align industrial and trade policies, so that as India Inc., we know what are the kind of FTAs, what is the access that's opening up. Our own government schemes are then aligned towards that, so that investment that goes in sees a longer term window. So that's one. Second is, as Uday just said, make sure that we have a deeper, larger financial services system to support the existing economy. Go and attract all the foreign capital that you can, but no country has ever become a developed economy just by relying on foreign capital. So you need to channelize savings, and fortunately we had $2,500 per capita, where incremental money earned essentially goes into financial savings, because you've taken care of your basic needs. So build out financial services to support the real economy. Third is, we have to make sure we create capacity in our people, which means starting with some basic stuff like double education spends, health spends, and ensure that you have large amount of social security cover in the form of, say, insurance protection, so that we are creating ready manpower for the future. And if we do a combination of these things, then the fourth is, while there's a lot of different kind of sectors to focus on, we have to take manufacturing from 16-17% of GDP to 20% and then to 25%. So the kind of PLI schemes that the government is working on, keep expanding those, bring in employment-linked incentive schemes as well for labor-intensive industries like tourism, logistics, etc. I believe a combination of these factors gives us the horsepower for the next 10 years.
Let me get you as well, Sanjeev, to address this issue that we just spoke of. This hope of moving manufacturing as a percentage of GDP from 16% to 20%, this has been the stated objective for over a decade now. We have seen the needle move a little bit. Everyone's now talking about the fact that, look, the world needs to look at backup locations, backup options. The iPhone manufacturing will shift more and more towards countries like India. That's the expectation, that's the assumption, that's the bet. From a long-term perspective, from a 10-year plus perspective at this point in time, what are the unfinished pieces that need to be put on the table to ensure that this manufacturing story gathers momentum from here on?
Okay. First of all, let me say that it is not merely backup. I would also say in the long term, we have to aspire for the center of gravity to shift. Right? It is the alternatives are going to certain places today, but those places don't have that capacity to be an alternative in the given geopolitical dynamic. So we can actually become the center of gravity. Now, I believe that a lot of policy interventions have happened. And all the policy interventions, many of them are absolutely in the right direction. It's about a lot of focus and looking at how we can accelerate the pace of execution. I think, for example, the investments on the Gati Shakti scheme and improving infrastructure so that there are efficiencies in the economy, that's a critical intervention. So how fast we can do it, that will certainly help us benefit from the opportunity that arises. How fast we can beef up the social infrastructure that Sanjeev alluded to. Yeah. I think all these are important enablers. From a policy perspective, they're all there. How do we ramp up and take it forward? But let me just add another dimension here, that whilst manufacturing is important, I think India has also to play to some other areas of strengths. See, demographics is a big strength for us. People are saying we'll be the workforce of the world, right? So what is it as far as the services economy is concerned, right? I know the IT services is doing well, it's galloping, it has shortage of skills, so, but we do have the resources who can be trained. But there are, other sectors also, and let me touch upon one sector, for example, tourism. So India has about, pre-COVID, we had about 11 million inbound tourists, right? A place like, one of the Disney worlds at various parts of the world, they have about 18 to 20 million tourists in a year. Right? Now, there are various estimates by industry bodies that we can ramp up that 11 million in 2047 to about 100 million.
Yeah.
And that today, the employment base, which is about 90 million, can go to 200 million. Ultimately, India has to also look at whatever trajectory of growth, of course, has to accelerate, but growth has to be inclusive, it has to be sustainable, and of course, resilient.
Mr. Kotak, creating world-size and world-class companies out of India. A lot of companies, Indian companies, did look outside. We did some fairly large acquisitions. Many of those didn't turn out the way that was expected. There was also a down cycle globally that we saw. But what does the path to that look like? I mean, we talk about global trade, and share of India in global trade continues to be at between 2 and 3%. How do we ensure that we do create private sector companies that will be able to take a large part of global trade?
See, I think, Shireen, again, this is a question about what's the shape of India's growth and the industry structure we want to see. We want to see world-scale companies. But at the same time, from an India point of view, we want to see many flowers bloom. We should not have a situation where it is just a very small garden. We want a garden which is large enough, maybe not too fragmented. I think Baba's point is valid. We need few big successes, but it still means that we need reasonably large number of Indian companies getting to scale. And I would therefore like to see, as consolidation happens, we also see innovation as the basis for India's growth in India and globally. I think one of the things we have got to be careful about, a lot of growth by Indian companies has come through some form of arbitrage. Okay, whether it's labor arbitrage, whether it's any form of arbitrage. We need to see a lot more of Indian growth coming out of product. If you like, let's look at software services. We are exporting services. How many products have we created, which the world wants to buy? So I think our growth and approach to getting global has to be by ownership of IP rights, technology, innovation, product-led, not just arbitrage-led. And that itself will catapult to us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for a very honest and candid conversation on what the road to 2047 could look like, areas that require fixing, and the areas of opportunity. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you joining us here today.